Hi guys. So we're going to be looking at 1-1. So this is like our first official learning target for this unit. So we're looking at solving 2 or 3-step equations. So this is our I can't stand that we're focusing on today. And there are a lot of examples that we could go through. The thing with solving equations is you could come across any equation, and if you know the basic steps, so if you know inverses, the inverse operations, and if you know what order to do them in, you can solve any equation you come across. Okay, so we're going to fill out these notes together. So up here it says an equation is a mathematical statement in which two expressions are equal. So it is called an equation because the two sides are equal and we have an equal sign. So a solution to the equation is a value that makes the equation true. To solve equations, we must isolate the variable by using inverse operations. So I know it's really hard to see in my note packet. The printer was kind of weird. We went through what inverse operations are and isolating the variable. So we know a variable has been isolated when it is alone on one side of the equal sign. So it doesn't matter what side it's on. So if we have a variable, I feel like my go-to is x. So we can either have x equals and then some number there, or we could have some number equals x. In both of these, the variable is by itself. Okay, so it doesn't matter what side it's on. So we have some examples here that we're going to go through. So it says, solve for the variable in the following equation. So we're going to have different variables each time, which is totally fine. So we're going to start with this first one. So it says negative 4x minus 10 equals 14. So I like to draw a line through the equal sign because whatever I do to one side of my equation, I have to do to the other side because I have to make sure that it still remains equal. And so what we want to do is we want to start with whatever's furthest from the variable. So we want to get the variable by itself. Anything that's next to it, we have to get away. So whatever's next to it, but furthest away from it. Okay, so I'm going to make a little note here. So furthest from our variable is first. Okay, so what I mean by that, I'm going to show you. So if my variable is right here, so this is my x, I have to move away this negative 4, and I have to move away this minus 10. Both of those so that my x is alone. Between the 4 and the negative 10, I'm going to start with whatever's furthest. And if I look, I think this negative 4 is pretty close to it. So I'm going to start by moving the minus 10 because that is further from this variable x than this negative 4 is. I don't look at the negative 14 because that's on the other side of the equal sign. It is already away from the variable. So we're going to start with that minus 10. And if we are subtracting 10 here, we want to do the inverse of that. So we're going to add 10 to this left side of the equal sign, which means I'm going to add 10 onto the right side of the equal sign. And that's going to make sure that my equation stays equal. So then I want to simplify what I have. I didn't do anything with this negative 4x, so I'm going to bring it straight down. So we still have negative 4x. When we have minus 10 plus 10, that turns to 0. So those cancel out. I'm just going to cross those out so I can see that they're gone. Then I have my equal sign. And I want to add these together. So 14 plus 10 is 24. So I know the spacing is weird. If you want to rewrite it without the gap, you can. But I'm not going to do that right now. So then I want to look at, is my variable by itself? And I notice it's not. I still have that negative 4 there. So I have to think about what operation is happening between those two. So in between the negative 4 and the x, they're squished together. They're really close. So because they're squished together, that means they're being multiplied. And if they're being multiplied, I have to undo that by using the inverse of multiplication, The inverse is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by the same number that it's being multiplied by. So I'm going to divide this side by -4, and I'm going to divide this side by -4. And it's a -4 because the -4 is being multiplied, not a +4, so I got to make sure that those are the same. So those will cancel. So I am left with x on the left side equals, and I have 24 divided by -4. So I can use my calculator to double check if I'm not feeling confident. So in my calculator, I'm going to type in 24 divided by -4, and I get -6. And that makes sense because a positive divided by a negative, since they're opposite signs, would still be negative. So I get -6. Then I want to double check, is my variable by itself? I notice it is isolated. So then I am all done. So I get x equals -6. Let's do the one right next to it, okay? So I'm still going to draw a line down my equal sign. And I notice that my variable is in a fraction, but it's on the left. And so I have to move everything away from my variable. So I'm going to have to move away this 4 and this 1. I want to start with whatever is furthest. Okay, so think about what you think is the furthest. I think that -1 is the furthest, so I'm going to start with that. So the inverse of subtraction is addition, so I'm going to add 1, which means I also need to add 1 onto the other side. I have to do it to both sides to make sure it stays equal. So these will cancel. I still have this fraction of w over 4. And then I'm going to simplify this side. So 2.25 plus 1 would be 3.25. You can check it in your calculators as well. And my variable is still not by itself. And so I have to get rid of that 4. We talked about this in the previous video. Whenever we have a fraction that is division, so we have to do the inverse of division. So I want to multiply both sides by 4. So I'm multiplying by 4 because that was what is in the fraction in the denominator. I'm dividing by 4, so the opposite is to multiply by 4. Those 4's will cancel, and so I'm left with w by itself on the left, and then I can type in my calculator 3.25 times 4, and I get positive 13. My variable is by itself, so I get w equals 13. Okay, so you notice we do have other examples. We're going to pause on those. So we did these two, so you should have these done. Then I want you guys to flip to the independent practice. So in the independent practice, excuse me, I want you to do this one and this one, so the two on the right.